Heads up, folks, and settle in. Today, I'm bringing you a true tale from the rugged mountains of western Hubei, specifically, a place called Dazhaiping in Badong County. This unfolded during an era when the nation was opening its doors wider than ever, and the gears of the legal system were turning with newfound promise. The title of our story is Small Cases, Great Sorrows. The infraction itself might seem trivial, but the sorrow it brought upon our protagonist was monumental. Now, pull up a chair and let the curtain rise on Chapter 1. A devoted brother overjoyed by kinship, a heartless sister overcome by greed. Our protagonist is an old farmer of the Tujia minority named Tan Weiqing, a lifelong tiller of the soil from Group 14 of Dazhaiping village. For the record, his ID is 422-823-34030-9237, and you can reach him at 0718-469-2209. Why lay out these dry facts so meticulously, you ask? Well, first, to prove this isn't some made-up yarn. Second, so any sympathetic souls out there can give him a ring and offer some comfort. And third, to save the authorities some paperwork, just in case some high-ranking official suddenly finds a spare moment to look into a poor man's grievance. But enough of the prelude, let's get to the meat of the story. You see, Weiqing had an elder brother named Weilin. Back in the old days of the nationalist regime, Weilin was press-ganged into the army and swept away across the strait to Taiwan. For 40 long years, the graveyard silence was unbroken, and the family assumed he had long since turned to dust. Yet, lo and behold, in the late 1980s, Weilin materialized out of the blue, walking back into the homeland he hadn't seen in 4 decades. It was the living image of the ancient verse. A boy forced away into the storm, an old man returning to the quiet farm. The green youth who had been dragged into uniform was now a weathered, graying elder showing every year of his exile. With their parents long in their graves, Weiqing's modest roof was the only place left for him to land. When the two brothers embraced, the dam broke. Decades of buried hardships and bittersweet memories came pouring out in an endless stream of talk. Word that Weilin was back from overseas hit the valley like a thunderbolt. It was the talk of the town. Neighbors, distant cousins, lifelong friends, and complete strangers came knocking in relentless waves. Some out of genuine warmth, others just to gawk at the anomaly and fish for gossip. Weiqing's house was a madhouse for weeks. Before the nation opened up, having connections abroad was treated like a social leprosy. People fled from it in terror, knowing it meant ruin. But times had changed. Now, a relative overseas was seen as a personal pipeline to the golden calf. Suddenly, everyone wanted to claim a piece of the lineage, chasing it like a stroke of divine luck. Old Tan has hit the jackpot. The whispers flew. His brother is back from the golden shores, staying right under his roof. Others would corner him with eager grins. Weiqing, your brother must be rolling in it over there. You're on Easy Street now, aren't you? This barrage of small-town gossip and blunt envy left poor Weiqing completely tongue-tied. Folks who don't know any better always assume that anyone living beyond the borders must be dripping with gold. They imagined these returning exiles arriving like kings with chests of bullion, ready to shower relatives with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, as casual handshakes. They didn't realize that overseas does not automatically turn a man into Croesus. Granted, compared to a subsistence farmer or a low-wage earner in a forgotten mountain valley, he was doing better. But he wasn't wealthy by a long shot. By international standards, men like him were just getting by, proud members of the modest middle class. The tokens of affection they could actually afford to hand out were bound to leave greedy expectations sorely disappointed. Weilin was the epitome of this modest class. He was no tycoon. He spent his prime living on meager soldiers' rations, which is hardly a recipe for a fortune. Upon his discharge, he became a rongmin, what we on the mainland call a demobilized veteran. He had his severance pay, a modest pension, and a small nest egg, but he had never managed to find a wife, raise children, or build an estate. The reasons were tangled, but it mostly boiled down to a simple truth. The man was just chronically unlucky. Now, etiquette demands gifts, and Weilin wasn't about to break tradition. He fully intended to distribute cash and tokens to the clan. But when the list of hands waiting to be greased grows too long, the butter spreads incredibly thin, leaving everyone feeling shortchanged. Looking around his younger brother's home, Weilin's heart sank. The walls were decaying, the furniture crude. By any modern standard, it was a hovel. He desperately wanted to hand over a fat stack of cash to rebuild the place, but his wallet simply couldn't back up his goodwill. The funds were running dry. Then came the trek to his parents' graves. Seeing them bare, with nothing but raw earth and no stone to mark their passing, a profound chill struck his soul. He had failed to serve them in life. If he left them unhonored in death, he wouldn't be able to look at his own reflection. To a traditional mind, raising a tombstone for your parents is the ultimate duty. For the dutiful child, it's the very definition of filial piety. For the black sheep of the family, it's a crucial matter of social face. A monument, its presence, its absence, its sheer size, becomes a theatrical prop for the living to broadcast their status. To leave a grave unmarked, without even the crudest slab, is to invite the neighbors to brand you a penniless failure. Neither Weilin nor Weiqing were saints above worldly pride, so they fell right into step with convention. They agreed that carving a proper monument was their absolute priority. Weilin asked his brother to handle the stonemason, promising to foot the bill. But this meant there wouldn't be a single penny left to help Weiqing fix his leaking roof, which weighed heavily on the older brother's conscience. Weiqing, however, brushed it off with a gentle smile. The stone comes first. It's been a heavy knot in my chest that I lacked the means to honor our parents properly. Now that you're funding it, as long as that monument stands, I am content. The house can wait. It's kept the rain off me this long. Weilin could only shake his head. No, a house needs fixing. I'll make it up to you next time. Now, Weilin also had two younger sisters. The youngest, Weizhu, was already in her grave. The elder, Giju, lived a grueling trek away over 30 miles of mountain tracks in Zijing village. It was a brutal hike, but since he had crossed an ocean to see his kin, he couldn't very well bypass her door. Unfortunately, this sister was cast from a completely different mold than Weiqing. Her head was filled with grand delusions of a financial windfall. She had been thoroughly corrupted by the local busybodies. The moment rumors spread of her brother's return, the village gossips began whispering in her ear, inflating her expectations until she truly believed she was about to inherit an empire. Before Weilin even arrived, Giju and her family were already talking with the swagger of newfound millionaires. They watched the road like hawks, and finally, the long-lost brother arrived. How could innocent Weilin suspect the mercenary greed harboring in his sister's heart? For 40 years, his only prayer to the heavens had been to see their faces again and feel the warmth of family bonds. He took it as a given that they hungered for the same connection. As the old folks say, an offering is measured by the heart, not the weight. A recipient should welcome any gesture of goodwill without looking a gift horse in the mouth, especially when siblings separated by oceans meet after a lifetime. It should have been about the tears, not the trinkets. Weilin handed out envelopes and tokens to the clan based on his actual means. The largest envelopes held a few hundred or a couple thousand yuan. The smallest, just a token note. Individually, it wasn't a fortune, but when you have to grease every palm in the village, the total cost nearly cleared him out. Weilin felt he had bled himself dry for them, but the relatives walked away feeling entirely shortchanged. Giju had been waiting for the grand finale, the moment her brother would pull out a thick ledger and say, "Here's a small fortune for your troubles, and I'll wire the rest later." She waited, but the room remained silent, so she began to fish. She lamented how desperately poor they were, dropping heavy hints about how beautifully the neighbors had paneled their walls, and how modern their furniture was. On and on she went. Weilin was thoroughly bewildered. Her house wasn't a palace, but it was a paradise compared to Weiqing's shack. Looking at their decent clothes, their household goods, and the food on their table, they looked perfectly comfortable. What kind of manufactured misery was this? Confused, he could only offer vague, non-committal grunts. Realizing her hints were falling on deaf ears, Giju threw off the mask and demanded hard cash. Wei Lin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He patiently explained that it wasn't a lack of love, but a literal lack of funds. The remaining notes in his pocket were barely enough to cover his train fare back to the coast. "I don't believe a word of it," she snapped, her greed curdling into pure malice. "Everyone else returns from abroad with mountains of wealth. Are you truly this pathetic? Or are you just hoarding it from your own blood?" To see her lifetime dream of riches vanish like smoke was too much to bear, and she lost all control of her tongue. Wei Lin, pushed to his limit, flared up, "Hoarding? If you think I'm lying, go ahead and search me." Now, Yezhou must have been temporarily unhinged, reverting to the reckless, spoiled tantrums of their childhood. "Fine, I will," she barked. She lunged forward and began aggressively tearing through his pockets. And the grand sum of her plunder? Alas, it was a beggarly harvest, meager indeed, a few copper coins and nothing more. This ugly display brought the reunion to a crashing, humiliating halt. The sister's face burned crimson with a mix of thwarted greed and shame, while the brother's countenance turned a deathly ash pale from sheer heartbreak and betrayal. To find out how this bitter rift tears the family apart, you'll have to come back for our next chapter.